You were listening to the Marc Patroni radio program. If you'd like to call, here's the number. 416-640-0200. That's 416-640-0200. The Marc Patroni radio program, heard exclusively on News Talk, Saga 960.
And we are back with more News Talk. So very glad you could join us on this Wednesday edition of the Marc Patroni radio program. We've got Miles Kirsten on the line. And Miles, it looks like, I guess, Joe Biden is the man. It didn't look this way about 3 weeks ago. People were saying it's all over for Joe and it's going to be Sanders. But out of nowhere, and then Trump came out yesterday and said, well, that's because there was this a plot, really, between Elizabeth Warren, who was the other far-left candidate. I mean, they're all left-wing, but Elizabeth Warren is left along with Biden, or with Sanders, rather. And I guess, according to Trump, she plotted with the DNC, the Democrat National Committee, to basically split the left-wing vote between herself and Sanders, thereby depriving crazy Bernie of a shot at going up against Trump. What do you make of that?
There's no doubt the Democratic insiders have done everything they could to stop Bernie. I mean, literally, Andrew Yang came out and endorsed Biden yesterday. I mean, it's just amazing.
Talk about this confrontation, if you want to call it a confrontation. I guess Joe was, confronted by a blue-collar worker. It looked like a factory worker or maybe an auto worker. This is in Detroit. And the auto worker made a statement about guns, saying that you're going to come after the gun. Let's hear a little bit of that. I've got to watch out that we don't get the curse word in there because Biden does say you're full of crap. But let's listen.
How you intend on getting the union vote when there's a large portion of the union workers that are gun enthusiasts, and you are actively trying to diminish our Second Amendment right and take away our guns.
Okay, there you go. He says you're full of you-know-what. And then he goes on to say, I got my own firearms.
Now, shush. Shush. I support the Second Amendment. Second Amendment, just like right now, if you yell fire, that's not free speech. And from the very beginning, I have a shotgun, I have a 20 gauge, a 12 gauge, my son's hunt. Guess what? You're not allowed to own any weapon. I'm not taking your gun away at all. You need 100 rounds. So
when you were in Beto, when you said you're going to take our guns,
I did not say that. That's not true. I did not say that. Video.
Okay, so then you go back, and what happened when Biden had Beto O'Rourke on the stage? Of course, we know what happened, don't we? I mean, let's listen a little bit. The audio's not great, but let's listen.
I'm going to guarantee you this is not the last year seeing this guy. You're going to take care of the gun problem with me. You're going to be the one.
Okay, he's talking to Beto O'Rourke, who's then interviewed on CNN.
Yes. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how will this work?
I am. Exactly how are you going to take away weapons from people who do not want to give them up?
Then that weapon will be taken from them. If they persist, there will be other consequences from law enforcement.
There will be people.
All right, so here you are. You have Beto O'Rourke, who said repeatedly that he was going to confiscate guns. Then you have Biden on stage with Beto O'Rourke saying, this is my guy. This is my gun-grabbing guy. This is how we're going to take care of the gun problem. Then he's confronted by a pro-Second Amendment firearms owner who says, I don't want you coming after my guns. What does Biden do? Calls them full of crap and says, I'd never said that.
I mean, there's even some reports that Biden actually threatened to slap the guy. But, I mean, the audio from yesterday was kind of hard to hear, but I've been saying it for a while now. Biden's going to say something so insane that maybe that he'd actually have to step down. I mean, I'm not even going to say the words, but I mean, there's a list of a few things that Biden could say that maybe it would be so egregious they'd have to, stop supporting him. But Biden's nomination is going to probably it will result in Trump winning, but it might actually result in Democrats leaving the party. The thing about gun control is, 20 years ago, there was the back and forth about Democrats wanted some gun restrictions, and people would make the argument, they're trying to take all your guns. But nowadays, you really literally have Democrats talking about repealing the Second Amendment. If you look at these anti-gun rallies, or if you look at here in Madison, where our former mayor has now written several articles in the local Isthmus newspaper talking about repeal the Second Amendment, repeal the Second Amendment. And it's like, no, there is a large percentage of Democrats these days who actually are for full taking away of guns.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that Beto speaks to that portion of the party, but Biden is trying to have it both ways and say, I'm going to be the Democrat Party standard bearer, and I stand for the same things that many of those radical Democrats now stand for, whether it's the Green New Deal or total gun confiscation. And so he wants to be able to say that to that group of people and say something completely different to your rank and file voter out there, like this worker, this blue collar guy, this union guy in Detroit who said, hey, I don't want you taking care of my guns. And Biden went after him, hammer and tong.
I can disagree with Republicans on all sorts of issues, but the thing about the Democrats is they always try to sit on both sides of the fence. Whether it's questions about Israel and Palestine, or police and anti-police protesters, or environmentalists and the big oil companies and so forth. The Democrats try to sit on both sides of the fence and get everyone's vote, and then what they do is they end up losing more people out of the process of it.
But there is some optimism amongst the ranks of Democrats, though, Miles. Some of them are talking about, and they're pointing to the results in Michigan where Biden won handily over Bernie, and saying, this is an indicator that Joe could rebuild the blue wall, bringing Michigan and Wisconsin, your state, back on side, back into the ranks of solid blue states. What do you make of that?
Well, Bernie is definitely doing worse now than he did 3 years ago. When he came to Madison in 2016, he had a rally at I want to say it was like the Kohl Center or something like that. He had almost 20,000 people. When Bernie Sanders came to Madison last year, it was at a public park, and he had like less than 400 people. And looking at the specifics about last night, I'm just blown away by the fact, too, that hundreds of thousands of people still voted for Elizabeth Warren and Mike Bloomberg. And Biden, he'll lose terribly if he's the candidate. There is that chance of the broker convention and everything. As far as Biden rebuilding the blue wall or whatever, I don't see that. Biden's just too far gone. He 15, 20 years ago, he wasn't a good candidate, but he was a little bit stronger of a candidate,
But now he makes a lot of mistakes. He's saying, he called it Super Thursday. He talked about 150 million Americans gunned down since 2007.
Refers to his wife as his sister.
Yeah, he confused his wife with his sister.
He talks about that strange speech he gave about, or talk he gave about cockroaches and his leg hair or whatever. It didn't even make any sense.
He called that supporter a dog-faced pony, a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
And of course, we can't forget his most memorable one of all, which is "Listen, fat."
And now all these people are rallying behind him, including like women.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris came out and said, Joe's my guy. And I think she suggested he was a racist at one point over his support for certain laws. And if you have to go all the way back to Clarence Thomas, and his support for Thomas, and a lot of people think that he's anti-women as a result of that. So he's had to walk back a lot of his policies. But I think more than anything, it's just his clumsiness. And Trump, in comparison, still looks like a guy who has still, a fair amount of vigor for a man in his 70s.
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about it lately. Like, who's a worse candidate, Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden? And Joe Biden's pretty darn close. I mean, I will say that Hillary Clinton was a even worse candidate because her history is so well known and she is so unliked and she radiates that pro-war, evil mentality. Joe has a little bit more humor to him, and the real question is, who is the team of people that are going to be running the campaigns? And in the end, it's going to be the exact same people who don't know what they're doing. So Wisconsin will go red again, and all these states will go red again because you're going to have a bunch of chipper young Democrats who are, these suburban kids who don't know outreach, don't understand, and then also they want to control the narrative where they won't talk about war, they won't talk about foreign policy. If anyone, if an independent journalist asks any of these volunteers and campaigners serious questions, they're more likely to call the police on journalists than answer their questions.
All right, so head-to-head, you think Trump will make short work of Biden? I mean, I realize a lot can happen between now and November, but at the moment, you don't have a whole lot of confidence in the Democrats winning the White House. And if you take that, what can I extrapolate onto, say, Senate and House seats? I mean, could this be a devastating result for the Democrats?
Oh, absolutely. And then as far as, Senate and congressional races, the Democratic Party, at least in Wisconsin, has this track record of running the exact same candidates after they lose an election. A great example was when Paul Ryan's seat went up, they had a guy who had failed at winning an assembly race and a school board race and a state senate race, and then they ran him for Congress. They made a big national deal of this guy named Randy Bryce. He was an absolute epic failure. We ran Tom Barrett for governor twice. We ran Russ Feingold for Senate twice. I mean, they run the exact same candidates, and they're already getting to do it again with some of the same candidates again and again and again for the exact same offices, and they never do better.
All right, Miles. Well, listen, thank you so much. Really appreciate this, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, before you go, are you still there? Sorry, Miles. Yeah, talk about your YouTube channel. How can my listeners access your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's just Miles Kristan, MILESKRISTAN, and I mean the network is Wisconsin International Radio, and actually me and some of the people that work with me on this project, we're talking about doing some things to expand it, possibly doing some video shows in person, and people can go on, and if they want to support the channel, there are links in the description, and there's things they can do to get involved.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
No, thank you for having me.
All right. That is Miles Kristan. We'll be back with our final scintillating segment on the Marc Petroni radio program.